Council, please approach. All right, let's bring in the jury. Yes, Ms. Arias, why don't you come up and take the stand, please? Please be seated. The record will show the presence of the jury, the defendant, and all counsel. Ms. Arias, you are still under oath. Do you understand?
Yes.
You may proceed with direct examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. Before we do so, we'd be moving to admit Exhibit 428. Yesterday, when we spoke, when we ended yesterday, I guess, we were talking about the time you spent, we were just getting into, I guess, the time you spent with Mr. Alexander in Ehrenberg, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Before we get into that a little bit, let me back up. Could you describe the town for Ehrenberg as it was back in October 2006 when you were there?
I don't recall its size, but it was very small. I think there was only 1 or 2 exits maybe, and it's in the middle of the desert. I think it's actually in California, but it's right on the border.
Apart from the midpoint that you described yesterday, being a midpoint between you and Mr. Alexander, was there any other particular reason or activity that you were going to go to Ehrenberg?
I was driving out there specifically to hang out with Travis.
But when you got there, there wasn't a particular lake or a particular site, park, or whatever that you were going to go to?
No, not that I was aware of or that we had planned. It's not exactly a tourist destination.
Okay. Now, yesterday you began to tell us about arriving at the hotel room, and I believe your words were making out with Mr. Alexander, right?
Yes.
Okay. If you could just kind of describe for us, and this was within minutes of you arriving, to our understanding?
Yes, it happened pretty quickly.
Okay. Just begin again describing what happened during this makeout session as you describe it.
You mean like in detail?
Yes.
Well, he opened the door for me because he had the room key, and he took my hand and walked me over to the bed, sort of. He kind of pulled me, but walked me. And I went willingly, of course. We started kissing. It got a little more intense, a little more passionate, and then soon we were both nude on the bed. And there were certain things that he said that, well, like it's not, I don't know, we didn't have intercourse, so to speak. There was oral sex that weekend, but in that particular day, we did what I guess he called, at that time he called it grinding. So it's kind of like, you know, just being together, but not actually having intercourse. That's something that I guess a lot of Mormons do, but they're not supposed to. There are different terms for it. Like the Provo push, and that's a Mormon implication, because it's in Utah. This is what I learned. So,
Objection, no, when Mayo spoke, she was asked what they did.
I'm sorry.
Okay, besides the grinding and the oral sex, you said you didn't have intercourse during this encounter, this first encounter.
Not vaginal intercourse or the...
Did you have anal intercourse?
No.
Just oral sex?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And this would have been when, recount for us, was this Thursday evening?
Yesterday I couldn't remember whether it was Thursday or Friday, but I remember it was Thursday because we spent 2 nights there and he had to leave on Saturday.
So you spent Thursday and Friday night together, he left on Saturday?
Yes, we both parted ways on Saturday.
Okay. So after this first encounter where there was oral sex, and were you giving or receiving the oral sex?
Both.
Okay. After this encounter, what happened? What did you do after this was over?
There wasn't really anything to do for a while. That night we stayed in the room. Eventually went to sleep. He just flipped on the TV and we watched, it might have been Friday night, but we watched some game shows, Deal or No Deal, different things. He was just flipping through the channels.
Did you engage in any more sexual activity on Thursday night?
Not after that.
The next day, you wake up, what do? Do you go out and do something, or what happens?
The next day we were trying to find some way to spend the day, and the town of Blythe is near Ehrenberg, so we decided to drive to Blythe because there was a small movie theater there, and we watched a movie. We went to Sizzler, got something to eat.
Let me ask you this. Did you engage in any sexual behavior before you went to the movie?
I don't remember.
Did you engage in any sexual behavior after the movie?
Yes.
And what behavior did you engage in?
That was oral sex.
Was this again mutual?
Yes.
You mentioned previously that you saw this as somewhat of a romantic weekend with Travis. Was that what it was turning out to be?
No.
When you weren't engaged in sexual activity, how was he treating you?
He wasn't treating me bad. He just seemed checked out. You know, the whole time we were checked in, he was just kind of distant. I thought we connected a lot over the phone, and it was different when we were together.
How?
Well, over the phone, we would talk for hours at a time about things, not just about sex, but other things, things of a spiritual nature, and just every subject that you could imagine, pleasant things. And we were discovering things that we had in common in ways we were different. And when we went to Ehrenberg, I was expecting the same kind of energy or connection, but it would just be in person. There wasn't much of a mental or emotional connection like there was on the phone. It was just primarily physical.
What's that?
Primarily physical.
And if you could do us a favor and speak up again, I know
Sorry.
I'm having trouble hearing you. So. At this point in time, were you and Mr. Alexander, would you consider yourselves to be in a relationship?
No, it wasn't anything defined. We were sort of seeing each other, but we were definitely not boyfriend-girlfriend.
How many sexual interactions did you have with Mr. Alexander over this time in Ehrenberg?
I would say 3. I mean, total, if you just,
Okay. And these were all instances of oral sex?
No, like the first night it was the grinding, and the next night was oral sex.
Okay. And what was the third encounter?
It was oral sex also.
Okay.
It was before we left.
Okay. Did he ever express a desire during this weekend to engage in anal sex with you?
Yes.
And did he, over the course of that weekend in Ehrenberg, express a desire to have vaginal sex with you?
No.
But it appears, based on what you've told us, you declined his desire to have anal sex. Is that correct?
Yeah, I did. Yes, I didn't. We did not have anal sex.
Okay. in expressing his desire for that, was that something he did repeatedly, or is that something that just came up one time?
It didn't just come up one time. He wasn't overly persistent about it, but it was somewhat repeatedly.
Okay. Apart from going to a movie and out to eat in Blythe, as you just described, what else, and the sexual encounters, what else did you do to pass the time?
Well, we made music CDs, or he made CDs on his computer with his music, some music that he liked that he was making for me. He shared more things from the Book of Mormon with me. What else did we do? Mostly it involved, we weren't in Blythe, he was watching television, other than those other two activities.
Now, in terms, and at this point in time, October 2006, you have received several visits from the missionaries, right? From what you described?
Yes.
Is that, okay.
Yes, by that time.
Had you had occasion to, whether it's through the missionaries, through Mr. Alexander, through church visits, through your own readings, had you ever learned about what we're calling the vow of chastity?
It was
At this point in
mentioned.
time?
It was mentioned to me, not in detail.
And in October of 2006, when you're in not Blythe, but in Ehrenberg with Mr. Alexander, what was your understanding of that vow?
According to the missionaries, they sort of glossed over it, and they didn't really gloss over it, but...
Beyond the scope, she's asked what her understanding was.
Okay, my understanding...
Hold on, wait, sorry. Question.
What was your understanding, not telling us what somebody said to you, but what was your understanding of what the vow meant, what it prohibited?
No premarital sex.
And did you have an understanding of how that was defined within the law? I mean, did it mean no penile-vaginal intercourse? Did it mean no kissing? What did that mean to your understanding?
Well, it was explained to me by Travis.
Objection. What is her understanding, not who's telling what?
Nate.
What was your understanding?
My understanding was that it meant that vaginal sex was off limits and everything else was more or less okay.
And who gave you that understanding?
Travis did.
Now, you talked about departing, both you and Mr. Alexander leaving Saturday morning. Tell us about that.
Saturday morning, we got breakfast at the neighboring truck stop restaurant. Again, there wasn't much connection. There wasn't a lot of conversation. I'm sorry, I forgot the question.
Well, what I'm asking you is describe for us the Saturday morning when you left. You said you had breakfast. What happened? Who left first?
Oh, okay. After breakfast, we left at the same time. We checked out, and I took a picture of him. He was in a suit and tie. He had to go to a Super Saturday here in Phoenix. It was one of the regional events in prepaid legal, and he hit the road for from Phoenix, and I went back to Palm Desert.
And How far a drive is Palm Desert from Ehrenberg, as best you can recall?
I want to say 3 hours, maybe, somewhere around that mark.
Okay. Tell us how you felt leaving Ehrenberg that Saturday morning and driving back.
Well, when we parted, there wasn't a lot of affection, so I kind of felt disappointed, not upset, just kind of bummed out a little bit. I don't know, kind of felt stupid.
Stupid how?
I was replaying the weekend, or it was my weekend. I was replaying that weekend, and I kind of wish things had gone a little bit differently.
What do you mean by that?
Maybe just, I wish that we had had more of a connection, a meeting of minds, rather. Well, I didn't dislike the physical part, but it seemed like it was missing an important element.
What important element was it missing?
The emotion and, like I said, just the mental connection, some kind of being on the same page, so to speak.
So you didn't feel, as you were leaving, you didn't feel any kind of emotional connection or like you had grown closer with Mr. Alexander. Is that what you're telling us?
I didn't feel like we'd grown closer. He seemed more distant.
Okay. How did you feel in retrospect about the sexual behavior you engaged in with Mr. Alexander? Do you feel okay? Was it still too far, too soon?
It didn't feel like too much too soon anymore because over that month we had really gotten to know each other very well. I developed feelings for him, and it just seemed, it was confusing though, even though it was a little confusing, the sex.
What do you mean? What was confusing about it?
Well, I mean, I guess just where the line should be drawn, I guess.
And what do you mean by line? Your line, the vow of chastity, what kind of line are you speaking of?
Well, to me, sex is sex. There's just different ways to have sex, and it seemed like Travis was kind of I don't know how to put it, but it just seemed like he sort of had like the Bill Clinton version, whereas over here it seemed like, oral and anal sex were also sex to me, but not for him.
And the line that you're talking about, that line of demarcation, really sounds like that dealt with the vow of chastity. Is that accurate?
Yes. Yeah.
When you were reflecting back on the weekend on your way back to Palm Desert, did you consider your actions, and your own, not his, but your own actions as it relates to that vow of chastity?
I considered it.
And how did you feel about that?
Well, I trusted what I was told by him, so I didn't feel like we were sinning. I felt a little bit, I hate to put it this way, but I felt a little bit used. But I knew I had gone there on my own willingly, so.
What do you mean, though, that you've felt used?
Well, he gets a hotel room, I show up, we hang out, we have sex. He's not really there presently, he's not mentally present. I'm getting a lot of attention, but only while we're engaging in sexual activity, and then we check out and he takes off. And I kind of felt like a prostitute, sort of.
You didn't feel real good about the relationship or how he treated you at that point, right?
I was more upset with myself. I didn't feel like he mistreated me, but I didn't feel like he was treating me as well as he had been for that entire month.
Okay. Do you hear from, you discussed earlier what was seemingly near daily contact with Mr. Alexander on the phone in the evenings. Did you speak with him that Saturday evening when you got back home?
No, I called him later, but he didn't return my call.
Did you hear from him on Sunday?
No, I called him one more time Sunday evening, left a voicemail, and he didn't return my call.
Was that abnormal for him not to return your call?
Maybe one night, not really. I did want to know if he made it home safely. But I wasn't trying to be his mother, but I was concerned about if he made it back safely. Sunday night, he began to call me very late at night by this point. So I would leave a voicemail if I was going to sleep, and sometimes he wouldn't call me back if I told him I had to sleep. Sometimes he would call anyway and wake me up. But by Monday morning, when he had not returned both of my calls,
well, let me back up a step and ask you this. You'd said on Saturday you're driving home, you're feeling used, you call him Saturday night, you don't get a return call. How are you feeling Sunday or about the weekend? Are you feeling the same way? Have your feelings changed on Sunday before?
They hadn't really changed. I was trying not to think about it much or put too much thought into it or overanalyze it.
After feeling the way you did on Saturday when you came back, when you were driving back, and feeling the same way Sunday, why would you want to speak with him at all?
I just had feelings for him.
Were you in love with him at that time?
I wouldn't say in love, but I had warm feelings for him, still sort of in the crush realm, but a little stronger, I'd say.
So those feelings for him were more prominent than your feelings for yourself about being used. Is that what you're telling us?
Judge, we,
Let me answer.
Can you repeat that question? I'm sorry.
You told us a few moments ago how you felt used as you were driving back from Ehrenberg. But you also told us that you had feelings for Mr. Alexander, and that's why you were reaching out to him on Saturday evening and Sunday evening. What I'm asking you is if your feelings for Mr. Alexander were stronger than your feelings for being used.
Yes, they were.
When you did not hear from him over these 2 days, how did your feelings about being used, did they become stronger? Did they become weaker?
I think I began to think, well, I sent him a text message again on Monday, so by that time he still didn't return any of those 3 attempts. So by that point, I was beginning to think that I had been very stupid and he got what he wanted and he wasn't interested in me anymore.
When you started feeling like stupid and he got what he wanted and he wasn't interested in you anymore, were you then in a position that you wanted to write him off, or were you in a position where you wanted to hear from him?
I can't say really either. I wasn't thinking of writing him off. I think if he was moving on, I would have liked to at least have known,
Okay. When did you get a response, if at all, from Mr. Alexander?
It would have been Tuesday evening, I was at a business briefing, and he called during the middle of that, and I didn't hear my phone because it was turned off, or the ringer was turned off. And so I checked afterward, and he had called and left me a very nice voicemail.
Did you wind up talking with Mr. Alexander after he left the voicemail?
Yes, I called him after the meeting.
I want to know what he said, but did your conversation with him then make you feel less like you were used when you were in Ehrenberg?
Yes, it was more reassuring. He wasn't reassuring me, but the nature of the call was reassuring to me.
Did you ever express your feelings to him about how you felt used when you were driving home?
No.
What was that?
No.
Why not?
I didn't want to make him feel bad. I also was telling myself that maybe that was just all in my head, and that's, I was misinterpreting it or overanalyzing it, and it wasn't that big of a deal.
So it sounds like after this phone conversation you have on Tuesday, everything is back to status quo in terms of your feelings towards Mr. Alexander. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay. Do these phone calls we heard about these long spiritual conversations, do they then begin again after this call on Tuesday?
Yes, the same routine, the same subject matters.
And those subject matters being more spiritual, or were they also sexual?
They were spiritual, sexual, and other things.
When do you recall seeing Mr. Alexander next?
I think it was right before Thanksgiving.
Okay. And do you recall the reason for that meeting with him?
He was on his way to Riverside, where he was going to spend Thanksgiving, and Palm Desert is on the way, so he stopped at my house and we hung out for a little while. And then he continued on to Riverside.
Now when were you baptized into the Mormon Church?
November 26th,
So, of what year?
2006.
So this would have been, was this and who baptized you?
Travis baptized me.
This visit you're mentioning, was that when he baptized you, or was this a distinct visit?
No, this was a distinct visit. It was right before Thanksgiving.
Okay. Were you baptized before or after Thanksgiving?
After Thanksgiving, I think was on the 22nd that year. Well, the 26th would have been on a Sunday, so whatever.